All right. Yeah, so today we'll be discussing scope management as part of our project management course. The main focus today would be for us to dive into one of the most crucial aspects of project management, which is scope management. Now, I want us to liken it to something. You know how when sometimes you feel like when you are doing a project, it is possible that the project will keep growing. When I say it will keep growing, it means the project may keep expanding with new features. The project may keep expanding with new features, and maybe additional requirements may be added from time to time. This is what scope management can help us to control. Scope management can help us to control the additional components that may be added to a project. Now, throughout this lecture, we are going to be breaking this down into very digestible pieces. Now, the main focus of this lecture will be for us to go through broadly what we mean by scope management. So first and foremost, we'll tackle why scope management can make or break our project. And we'll have to think of it in terms of laying a foundation. Yeah, if we get it wrong, everything else can become very shaky. We'll also explore what we refer to as conceptual development and how it works and how it is a critical step as part of scope management. And when we talk about conceptual development, this is where we turn our vague ideas about a project into very concrete plans. It's like turning the issue of, say, I want a house into actual blueprints. So if you say you want a house, you may have to translate the fact that you want a house into maybe some architectural drawings or the blueprints of how the actual house will look like. So as part of this, we will learn the step-by-step process of crafting a very solid scope statement, and we'll explain what we mean by scope statement as we go forward. The scope statements are basically your project's roadmap, and you need to know exactly what you are building. You also need to know exactly how you are starting and all that. We will also cover what goes on into what we refer to as work authorization. So 5.4, we'll look at the elements in the work authorization phase. And then 5.5, we'll look at the various types of information that we can use for scope reporting. Then 5.6, we will look at how the control systems and the configuration management related to scope management, to scope development. And then finally, we'll look at closeout when we are ending. How are we ending? When we are ending, we also have to critically consider the sustainability of the project. So in the last part, we'll try to understand how project practices can support the critical goal of ensuring sustainability. So I will start off by, first of all, trying to explain what we mean by a project scope. Now, the project scope is a fundamental concept when we are talking about project management. So I would want you to think of project scope as drawing a line in the sun, a line on the ground. It is your project's boundary line. And it is this boundary line that will tell everyone what is in and what is outside the project. Just like a fence around your property, the project scope clearly marks your territory. So it is very fundamental because imagine you are building a house. The scope isn't just to build a house. The scope is part of every single detail about that house in terms of how many rooms are you going to build. That's part of the scope. What materials are you going to use? You may even consider, will there be a garage? Will there be a garden? Without defining these boundaries, you might end up with an endless request for maybe let's just add this. You will not be sure what exactly you are doing. So the scope basically encompasses everything that makes up what? Our project. That's what the scope is about. Everything that encompasses our project. And it will involve our specific goals. Like if you want to create a mobile app that users can use to order coffee, that may be our specific goal. But the deliverable may be the actual app you are going to what? You are going to put together. The deliverable may also be the user documentation, maybe the manual. If you are also going to train people how to use it, the training materials may also be part of the deliverables. But as part of the project scope, there will also be tasks, certain things that needs to be done. If you are going to build an app, some of the tasks may involve designing the app, coding, testing, and deployment. As part of the project scope, there may also be issues like deadlines. When would each phase finish? Then there will also be the issues regarding what cost elements as part of the scope, budget for development, budget for testing, budget for marketing, and what have you. All of these are part of the project scope. The resources in terms of labor, developers, the designers, the equipment you need, all of these form part of what we refer to as the project scope. Now, the crucial part of a project scope is not just about what you are doing. If you are building that mobile app, maybe you are not including maybe a desktop version. That may not be part of your scope, but it is important to state explicitly what exactly the project is going to do, what exactly it is going to do in terms of deliverables, what exactly is going to do in terms of who's going to do what, the deadlines we are going to meet, the cost implications, what is the budget limit, then the resources. All this form part of what we refer to as the project scope. Now, when we are talking about the project scope, remember I indicated that it involves the deliverables, the task, the cost, and many others. So when we are talking about project scope, it is about everything regarding the project. The project scope is not about the final product. It is about the entire journey that can lead to what? The final product. So it includes what we are doing, and what we are doing usually is what we refer to as the work content, and what you are trying to also achieve. That is the deliverable or the expected outcome. So you have to, sometimes you have to think of it as both the roadmap and the destination. Because we say you have to think of it in terms of the roadmap, because you see the tasks we are going to be completing, the cost implications, all these are part of the roadmap, and including the deliverable, the final outcome or the expected outcome, all of this. So when we are talking about project scope, you have to think of it as both the roadmap and what? The destination. Now, let's break down the project scope into 6 components. And these 6 components, we refer to it as components of what? Scope management. If we're going to manage the scope of a project, we need to consider this. And we say that scope management is a function of controlling a project in terms of its goals and what? And objectives. And it consists of the following. The first one is the concept development or conceptual development. This is actually where your project takes its first breath. You are brainstorming in terms of ideas. You are defining what success may look like, and then you are defining what success may look like and sketching out the bigger picture. It's like creating the blueprint before even building what? The house. Then whilst the conceptual development would be the idea stage, the ideation stage, we also have what we refer to as a scope statement. The scope statement, this is where you get to be very specific about your project. You document exactly what is included and what is not. So when you have the idea, you have to document, this is part of the project, this is not part of the project, and that will be documented in what? The scope statement. So documenting exactly what is included and what's not. This becomes your contract with the stakeholders. The moment you document it, you will show it to the client. This is what is included in the project. Then this is not what is included in the project. So it becomes some kind of an agreement or a contract between you and your client. Then the third part of the scope management is work authorization. Now, think of this as the official green light, the work authorization. This is the official green light. This is where you get formal approval to use organization's resources to begin the project. This is where you get the formal approval to start. Without this, you are just planning. You are not actually doing anything at the conceptualization stage. You are not also doing much at the scope development. But the moment you are given the green light, that is the stage of what? Work authorization. It's like the work authorization stage. Without this, you have not actually started the actual work. Then the fourth one is scope reporting. The scope reporting is about, it's like, we can refer to it as more or less like a health check. A health check. So regular reports will show whether you are on track or not. If there are issues or if changes are needed, this is the stage at which you will be able to tell. It's like having a GPS that can tell you if you are on the right route or not. That's the scope reporting. So once in a while, you'll be making a report in terms of how the project is moving. Once you are doing that, you also need what we refer to as guardians. And these guardians are the control systems that are put in place to help you manage the changes. It can also help you track changes or progress and then ensure that everything would stay aligned with the original plan. So think of the control systems as your project's immune system that is going to protect you if you are going off track or you are on track. That's what is going to keep you in check. And it will protect you from what we refer to as scope creep. It will also help you or keep you on track so that your project will not become a project runaway. And then the final stage is the project closeout. The project closeout is actually the final piece of the puzzle. Here, you verify all the deliverables, whether they are complete or not. Then you also document the lessons, and formally, you will just close the project. Okay, so I would want to just pause and find out if you have any questions before I can proceed. So basically, we are saying that when we are dealing with scope management, it is important that first of all, we try to understand what we mean by project scope. And I'm saying that the project scope basically involves quite a number of things. It involves the deliverables, the cost elements, the task. But when you are actually going to manage the project scope, you need to go through a number of things. And these things you have to go through are the conceptual development, the idea development, the scope statement, documenting it, the work authorization, getting the green light, scope reporting, reporting what's going on, control systems serving as your health check or the immune system, and then project close out. Okay. Now, I want us to look at some of the issues one after the other. So I already explained what conceptual development stage is, but let's look at it in detail. So think of the conceptual development as your project's planning phase. And this is what I indicated earlier by saying that this is the stage where all the ideas come together. So think of it as your planning phase, where you figure out not just what you want to do, but you also want to figure out the best way to do it. So let's look at the best way it can be done, the project can be done. The first thing is the problem or the need statement. Now, this is where you clearly define what issue you are trying to solve. What issue is the client interested in you satisfying him or her? So think of it that way, where you define what issue you are trying to solve or the opportunity you are trying to capture. So like something like our customers need a faster way to order coffee during rush hour. How are you going to help them achieve that? Now, the moment you identify a problem, you have to be able to gather requirements. You have to gather requirements to understand. Here, you collect all the must-haves and the nice to have things from the stakeholders. What features do the users want? What technical specifications are needed? What business requirements must be met and all that? All these things are very critical. And I know as part of your IS system analysis and design, you may have looked at some of the ways by which you can gather some of these requirements. Now, the next thing as part of the conceptual development is to consider the constraints because you don't have all the resources. Now, the constraints are basically your boundaries or your limitations. Will you be able to get the budget if you only have $100,000? But will you be able to get the 100,000 to be able to execute it? Do you have all the time? Is it possible that you can launch the project or you can finish the project in Q3 or Q2 as demanded by the client? Do you have enough resources? You have to be very realistic at this stage. Then when you get realistic at this stage, you may realize that because of the constraints, you have to consider other alternatives. And this is where the next point comes in, alternative analysis. So you may have to consider the alternatives. So you just don't jump at the first solution. Here you explore different ways to solve the problem. Maybe a mobile app isn't the answer. Could it be a kiosk system or something else? Then you also consider the project objectives. You set specific measurable goals. And usually when it comes to project objectives, we usually would say that the project objectives should be what? It should be SMART. SMART means that it should be specific, it should be measurable, it should be attainable, it should be time bound, and it should also be, it should also be time bound. All our objectives should be SMART. Then the last one, finally, you pull it all together to show why the project is worth pursuing. Let me pause just a little bit again. Yes, someone is asking if the course we have started. Yes, we have started. Oh, sorry, I'm just suffering a little bit of a glitch here. Yes, can somebody confirm if you are still seeing my screen? And then can you confirm?
Yes, we can see it.
And can you hear me clearly?
Yes, very loud and clear.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So let me mute you again. And yeah, sorry, let me just also confirm. Is it still in the full slide mode?
Yes, it's still in presentation mode.
Presentation mode. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So let's continue. Yeah. So let me just go back a bit and show you something which go back a bit. When we're discussing the steps in the project scope management, we mentioned conceptual development and scope statement. We just looked at the conceptual development. Now, the next thing for us to look at is the scope statement. That is what is next in terms of the steps. Now, when we say scope statement, what do we basically mean? So you have to think of the scope statement as a guide that will help you through everything. It is a guide that everything would follow. Now, we can break this down also. We can break it down into some essential components. And the essential components will be one, the project goal criteria. The project goal criteria will involve a number of things. The costs in terms of your budget boundaries, your schedule, that is your timeline, your performance, that is about your quality standards, and the metrics you will use to measure success. And then we also have the deliverables. The deliverables are basically the specific products or results you will produce for the client. And then the last one is a review or an approval. This is your checkpoints where the stakeholders will sign off everything. Now, the second part of it is the management plan. This is your roadmap of how you would be able to perform or execute the project. So the management plan basically outlines who will do what, the rules, the responsibilities, what are the communication channels, and the decision-making processes. Then the third one is what we refer to as the work breakdown structure. You establish a work breakdown structure. Now, a work breakdown structure, let's think of it as your project family tree. So we have a big project. The work breakdown structure actually helps us in breaking down our project into smaller chunks so that it will be manageable, so that it will be easier for us to what? Execute it. The work breakdown structure actually helps ensure that nothing gets what? Overlooked. So your project may be very big. So you break it down into smaller chunks so that it will be easier for you to do what? To even assign roles and responsibilities to them. And then the last one is the scope baseline. The scope baseline basically becomes your reference point. The scope baseline becomes your reference point for measuring your progress and your changes. So at this particular stage, it will help you to take a snapshot of your initial scope. Then you can refer back to it. So usually those of you who have worked in non-governmental organizations, when a project is going to start, usually they will do a baseline study to see the status quo, what is there. So that later on, when the project actually starts and is being implemented, they can always go back and measure what was happening. And when the project came, what is now the change. So creating a baseline would help us to be able to do this reference pointing so that we can always measure our progress and our changes. Now, it is not always a smooth sail when projects are being implemented. Usually, projects may suffer what we refer to as scope creep. And scope creeps refers to an authorized or uncontrolled expansion of a project's scope beyond its originally defined boundaries. Now, to be able to understand this very well, think of a scope creep like this. Assuming you agree to build a simple tree house for maybe your children. First, they want a window, and maybe that may seem very reasonable. There may be a slide. Next thing you know, they are asking for electricity, they are asking for air conditioning, and maybe a mini fridge. Before you realize it, your weekend project has turned into something very big. It turned into something very big, which cannot be, which your original budget will not be able to what? Contain. This is exactly what happens in some professional projects. It may usually start with an innocent, and it may usually start with something just coming in. Maybe someone may just ask, or the client may just say, could you just add this small feature to it? You have to be careful in accepting such a request because when you do that, it may have cost implications. And if there are cost implications, it may also have some labor implications. A lot of resource implications will be there. And when that happens, it may lead to an unauthorized or uncontrolled expansion of the project, which may be beyond the original agreement that was done. So the actual problem with scope creep is that each individual change might seem small. You may see, oh, this one there, we can just do it, we can manage. But before you realize, the implications may stretch the project beyond costs and may sometimes lead to delays. The client actually originally didn't request something. Later, he comes back requesting for it. You didn't factor in the cost elements and you agree to it. It may delay the delivery period for the project. Now, the next thing is for us to consider what we refer to as the statement of work. The statement of work is a detailed narrative description of the work you are required to do. It's a detailed narrative description of what you are supposed to do in terms of what? The project. So the statement of work is much more than just a document. It is your project story told in a very precise and actionable terms. So you have to think of it like the instruction manual for the project. So three essential components. The first part of the statement of work, this particular document, is the introduction and the background. Then you will have the technical description of the project, what technical things that needs to be done to ensure that the project is properly executed. And then we have the timelines and the milestones. When are the deliverables going to be done? What are the critical points in time we can get this done? Now, the scope of work, this particular document has several critical components. Let's now break it down into specific components: the background, the objectives, the scope, the task or requirements, the selection criteria, the deliverables, security, place of performance, and also period of performance. The period of performance basically is referring to the timelines and the milestones. Now, apart from documenting the project, documenting the scope, documenting the requirements and everything in the statement of work by using these components, there's also something critical we have to consider. Because after the statement of work, which lays out what needs to be done, the project will have a charter. The project will have a charter. And the project charter comes in handy because it is actually the authority that is going to be given to you to do that. The project charter basically is a document issued by the project initiator or the project sponsor. And this document will formally be giving you the authority to start. The project charter is created once the project sponsors have done their homework to verify that there is business case, there is viability for the project, and the elements of the project are understood, and everything is agreed on by both the client and the company. Then they will sign it off and give that final authorization to do what? To start. Now, you can't just start working on a project. When we were started, I think I indicated that as part of what we are supposed to do in this project. Projects may be big. It is important that you divide the project in smaller chunks so that it will be easier for you to achieve or execute it. So think of the work breakdown structure as breaking down the project into what? Smaller, manageable components. So for instance, if your project is to embark on an MBA program, the MBA program, the work breakdown structure in terms of the MBA program will be the different trimesters we have. We can also be broken down into different courses. And the courses can be broken down into different topics. This is how a project breakdown structure look like. Each deliverable as part of the project can be decomposed or can be broken down into small pieces. And each piece will represent the work that needs to be completed to achieve the next one. When we are talking about work breakdown structures, they have 6 main purposes. Why do you think that it will be important to break down a project? So let me pause here and then we can engage. Apart from what I have listed, that work breakdown structure can serve 6 main purposes by echoing the project objectives, organization chart for the project, because you now know who is doing what. It also creates a logic for tracking costs, because the moment you break it down into smaller chunks, it's easier to track cost. It is easier to schedule, and it's easier to understand the performance, to use performance metrics to measure your performance specifications and other things. Communication is also easier. It improves project communication, and then it is also easier for project officers to be able to control several aspects of the project. Apart from this, can you tell me some of the reasons that may be behind breaking down our project into smaller chunks using a work breakdown structure? So I'm inviting your comments. I'm inviting your comments. So you can unmute and speak. Why do you think projects needs to be broken down?
Okay, Prof, I'm done here.
Okay.
Okay, so for me, at the layman point of view, for instance, if you are undertaking a building project, you cannot just come and just do it once at a time. You need to systematically do it. So maybe management will want to see the process involved, a systematic process that will involve in order to carry out the project. Hello, somebody says I'm muted.
So yes.
So I'm just saying that in order to be able to systematically track the work in progress and the entire reality of the project.
Okay. Any other? All right. All right. So let me mute everybody, and then we can proceed. Now, so let's look at a typical. Let's look at a typical work breakdown structure hierarchy. So I want to explain how it works. So work breakdown structure. If you look at, let's look at a triangle. Using a triangle, you would see that if a triangle that is maybe inverted or just a normal triangle, you see the way it is scooped. A work breakdown structure is in levels. So maybe at the top, that is the overall project, which we have undertaken or the organization has undertaken to do. Now, this project can be divided into several deliverables, maybe major components or what, or parts. So that may be a level 2 deliverable. Then that major deliverable can also be what? Subdivided into a sub-deliverable. Then it can also be subdivided into a smaller chunk. Now, when it is divided into a smaller chunk, the last part of it, the lowest level in the work breakdown structure, we refer to that as the work package. So we have a bigger project which can be divided into smaller chunks. So maybe the one of the chunks may be a deliverable, which may still be a bit big. We divide it into a sub-deliverable, and then the sub-deliverable can also be just like the MBA example I indicated. So you can see that the barest minimum would be the topics you are going to be taking as part of your MBA. And that will be an example of what? A work package. Work packages are the lowest levels in the work breakdown structure. They are the lowest. And usually work packages are assigned to just maybe one person who would be able to carry it out because they are just smaller miniature projects. However, it fits into the broader organizational project. So in order to define what a work breakdown structure is, we can say it is the lowest level in the work breakdown structure. That's a work package. This is where everything gets done. The most detailed level of your work, your project breakdown, where the actual work is conducted. At that particular level, it is easier to track. This particular diagram gives us an example of what a work breakdown structure diagram may look like. So you see that at the very top, we have somebody gave some very good answers online by typing. That's good. So you see that at the very top, level 1.0 is the main project, the big picture. Then it branches out into 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, and 1.5. These are the major deliverables, and the major deliverables are also broken down into 1.2.1, 1.2.2. These are the smaller work packages that we are talking about. Okay. Now, another diagram. Now, for us to be able to break down our project using a work breakdown structure, we can use a software to help us do that. And the software we can use to help us do that is called Microsoft Project. The Microsoft Project is just like Microsoft Office. which we can install on our computer. And then we'll be able to break down the project into smaller tasks. So you see that in this particular column, we have what we call task name. Now, this particular project preview is an example of an IT installation project. And let's look at it in terms of the work breakdown structure. You can see that though it is an IT installation, so you see at the top, IT installation 1, and it can be broken down into, say, 1.1, matching IT to organizational tasks, 1.2, identifying IT user needs, 1.3, preparing informal proposal. All of these are examples of how a project can be broken down into a work breakdown structure. And we're saying that the barest minimum will be what we refer to as the work package. So let me just go back to our terms again. We are talking about the project. We are talking about the project being broken down into what? Into some structures, work breakdown structure, different levels. And then we are saying that at the barest minimum of the WBS, which is the work breakdown structure, we have what we refer to as what? The work package. The work package is the barest minimum. Now, let's introduce another term, organizational breakdown structure. The organizational breakdown structure can be described as the hierarchical representation of the organization structure. And usually in management parlance, this is what we refer to as the organizational hierarchy, or basically the organizational structure. It depicts the reporting lines, the responsibilities, and the overall hierarchy in the organization. Usually, if you go into some organizations, you would see a visual tool that provides a clear overview of who is sitting at the top, who is next, who reports to who. This is a typical example of the organizational breakdown structure. It is also very important when we are looking at projects, because we should know in the bigger organization, we should have a bigger picture of the organization in terms of how the responsibilities are, even before the start of the project. We must also understand that though we can have a project that would have its structure, the overall structure in the organization becomes what? Becomes paramount. That is why it is important that we understand the organization breakdown structure, because it can play a critical role in the successful delivery of a project. Now, there are some critical components of the organizational breakdown structure, and the three critical components are the hierarchy, the departments or teams, and the position or rules. If you look at the organizational structure, it clearly indicates what? A hierarchy. And the hierarchy displays the organizational hierarchy in terms of what? Top down. Who is at the top, who is followed. It starts usually with the highest level of management and breaks down into what? The lower levels. Each level of the organizational breakdown structure represents a different team. So usually we would have it in what? Maybe in terms of departments. But even under each department would have a head. So within each department or team, you would have specific positions or roles which are clearly identified. Sometimes some roles can be cross-functional, or it may not be. So the positions or roles could include titles like maybe a manager, a team lead, a project officer, an analyst, or just an individual contributor. So these are the critical components. Okay. Now I want us to look at two things by using this diagram. How is the work breakdown structure and the organizational breakdown structure interrelated? Do you think they are interrelated? Let me pause a bit and give us the opportunity to discuss this. So you can unmute yourself if you want to. Are they related? The work breakdown structure and the organizational breakdown structure. How do you think they can be related? Because, and let me explain. So you see in this diagram, we have 1.0. That is the project at its highest level. Then we have 1.3. We prepare a proposal. 1.4, we seek and hire IT consultant. Then we have 1.5, seek support for IT. All these are deliverables. Then we now have 1.4. So if you take even 1.4, it's broken down into 1.4.1, 1.4.2, and 1.4.3. This is just a typical example of what? A work breakdown structure. But if you also look at it carefully, 1.0, which is the IT installation, 1.0, which is the IT installation, there would also be people at that particular level who, according to the organization breakdown structure, may have the responsibility for the IT installation, but they may not have responsibility to prepare the proposal because they are not operating at that lower level. So if you look at the work breakdown structure and the organizational breakdown structure, there is some kind of what? A relationship between the work breakdown structure and what? The organizational breakdown structure. Because where you occupy in the organization, based on the organization breakdown structure, will indicate what you do when there is a work breakdown structure. Let me say it again. The position you are occupying in the organization breakdown structure can influence, or it has a direct impact on what happens in the work breakdown structure. Because where you are, the position you are occupying in an organization can determine what you do in a project. So the two are very, very interrelated. They are very interrelated. Now, because the work package is a critical component of the project, and I say the work package is a critical component of the project because of one reason. And can someone tell us why the work package is a critical component of the work breakdown structure? I want to find out if you guys are following. The work package. We indicated that the work package is the barest minimum when you are breaking down the project. It's the lowest. Why do you think the work package is so critical when we are dealing with projects? Yes? Why do you think the work package is critical? The work package is the lowest level in the work breakdown structure. So if the work package gets to be delivered, that means it can easily lead to the realization of what? Of the project, because that's the barest minimum.
Entire project.
Those at the bottom, if they don't do it, the project will fail. So when we break down a project into smaller components, the barest minimum, those at the bottom, if they don't do it, those at the top, they remember that those at the top usually don't get their hands dirty. It is those at the bottom. Someone would say those at the top are the pen pushers. Usually those at the top, we call them, they are occupying the white collar positions. But those occupying the blue collar positions, they are those who are dealing with the work packages. And when they fail, it can have a tremendous impact on the project delivery. That is why we have to take the work package so serious.
Hello, sir.
Yes, I'm listening, sir.
Prof.
Hello, Prof.
Hello, Prof.
Yes, I'm listening.
Okay, I think my colleague came first, so he can talk.
Yes.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Am I the one on or my colleague, sir?
You are on.
Okay, sir. So I just want to contribute a little bit to the work package.
Yes.
Yes, I'm also trying to explain it from this point of view.
Okay.
It's like the way we've entered 2025. We all have what we call the resolution for this year.
Yes.
And the year is made up of 12 months, 365 days, and then 52 plus weeks.
Okay.
So we are looking at a year. So these yearly goals or resolutions can be broken down to monthly and weekly and daily achievements.
Yes.
And so if on a daily basis you are unable to achieve the target that you have set for the day, it wouldn't be a surprise that at the end of the day you will fail, or at the end of the day you'll not be able to achieve the yearly goal, because on the daily basis you have not been able to meet your targets.
Yes.
So basically, that is it, sir.
Yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
Sometimes it is easier when we relate these things to what we are.
Hello.
Yes, go on, please.
Yes, Paul. So in line with the lowest level, let me call it staff, you realize that sometimes some organizations, let's say leaders, business heads, usually when they are given targets to achieve, there are some of us, though we are not the big guys, but what we do to actually achieve that what's the name, target for the business heads is actually counting. And so the lowest level staff are actually an important section of the org structure.
Yeah.
So that's what I can say.
Yes, very good. Those are the lowest level, what they do. So maybe we can even relate it to situations where in organizations, the lowest level staff are often overlooked. Maybe they don't have some big or high formal qualifications, so people don't really take them serious. But some of them do very critical things when it comes to project implementation. And when they are not committed, the project can easily fail.
Yes.
So it is always
that's even the reason why you realize that some of us were at the lower level, but at a point the company realized that what you do, you can feature at the top level, the middle level. Yep. And so you see them promoting some of us to the middle management. Yes.
So what you are saying, you see that there's a linkage between the organizational breakdown structure and work package or the work breakdown structure. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say. The way the organization is structured, if you are at the lower level, and what you do is at the work package, barest minimum. But they realize that though you are at the lower level, you can do something more critical, maybe as a middle level manager. So you see that what you were doing as part of the work package at the lowest level, because of your expertise, because of the role you were occupying, they are not changing you a role. So what you were doing is actually tied to what you are occupying. The two are usually interlinked in a way. What you do as part of your work can influence or can lead to your promotion to a higher level in the organization. So there's a relationship between the work breakdown and the organizational breakdown structure. But in all of this, we are saying that what actually ties the two together is the work package, especially for the category of employees who are at the lower level of the organization. Okay.
Yes.
So for defining what a project work package is, I think we have done a lot of justice to that. Now, we also indicated some time earlier that the project charter, there's what we call a project charter, which the project sponsors may give as an authorization for you to start the project. Now, we can relate that with what we refer to as work authorization, the formal go ahead to begin. It is essentially your project official green light. And usually the authorization will come in the context of what we refer to as the project charter, the contractual documentation, which will identify the contractual requirements, the valid consideration, the terms. Everybody have signed up to it. The organization, we have agreed to it, the clients have agreed to it, and then they can give the go ahead and say that, well, since we have now signed the agreement, there's a full authorization for us to commence work. But when we commence work, we would not just start working and then come at the end of the project timeline and say that, okay, here is the project deliverable. We would have to go through quite a number of things. We'll go through a number of things. For instance, during the project execution, we would be reporting from time to time. And this is what we refer to as scope reporting. The scope reporting is your project's monitor. It's not just about collecting the data. You have to get the right data and pass the data to the right people. You pass the data to the right people at the right time. The key elements are the what, the who, when, and the how. When we are talking about the what, we should be specific about the type of data we are collecting. When we are talking about the who, we should be specific. Who are the key stakeholders? Who needs the updates? When we are talking about the when, we should consider the frequency and timing of what? Our reports. And then also the how in terms of how we're going to collect the data, how are we going to share it, and all of that. All these are very important. Now, a typical project report once in a while will focus on 3 key things. The cost status. Are we within budget? Are we out of budget? Scheduling status. Have we received the raw materials to commence? Have we received the raw materials to proceed? Do we have enough raw materials to continue? Apart from that, we also need to provide updates on the technical performance status in terms of what? Quality metrics. Are we doing well? Are we able to meet the timeline? We have to always try to compare the performance at any particular point in time with what? The technical specifications to see how we are doing. But even we may be very efficient when it comes to scope reporting, but the project may still fail. The project may still fail. Why would a project fail? When the scope is clearly defined, we understand the work packages, we break down the work properly using a well-defined work breakdown structure. Everybody is assigned a role and responsibility. We are reporting timely in terms of cost, in terms of schedule, in terms of technical performance, but the project is still failing. Why do you think a project will fail despite we putting in place all of these things? I invite your comments. Why do you think a project will fail despite the fact that we're doing all of this? Yes? Why do you think projects may fail despite all what we do?
So, Prof, we have a lot of entries regarding why projects fail. But
Okay.
a catchy one would be when a project lacks support from the management.
Yes, top
Also,
management support. Yes.
Yes.
So apart from just putting it
also,
in terms of top management support, if there's no, that's usually what we refer to as the management buy-in. There's no buy-in from the top. So the project is likely to fail. Yes, go on.
Hello.
Yeah, also, yes, so client acceptance, we look at previously.
Yes.
In terms of sustainability.
Yes.
And yes. So the client acceptance is one of the for my.
Okay. Madam Francisca, yes.
Yes, sir. It could be also be financial constraints.
Yes, financial constraints.
Due to lack of financial constraints.
Yeah, the project may fail. So now I'm tying what you are saying to the typical project reports, what it may contain. Costs. If the reporting isn't done well in terms of the cost status, the project will fail. You underreport the costs, or you overreport. All this can influence it. Osman.
Yes, sir.
Yep.
We can also talk about the timely delivery of the project.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. If it's not delivered in time, we may consider that. So sometimes the project may be on schedule in terms of performance, but in terms of timelines, well, they are doing very well in terms of quality metrics. But when it comes to the timing, they may not be able to deliver. We can say that, yeah, the project has failed because it didn't meet the timeline. Are you getting it? So you are right. Yes. There may be other reasons why projects may fail. Let's look at some of them. Reasons why projects may fail. Politics, internal power struggles in the organization can lead to a project failing, especially if there are competing departmental agendas or there are resource allocation conflicts or no management buy-in. So there are decision-making bottlenecks. It can all lead to what? The project failing. Sometimes to naive promises, unrealistic commitments to stakeholders. We make unrealistic targets, too high a target. We can overpromise on deliveries. It will fail. Or we can underestimate complexity in terms of instead of knowing very well that we didn't know that a project is that complex. That is underestimating complexity. Or we may even set impossible deadlines. Apart from that, naive optimism of youth, underestimating the challenges, especially considering lack of experience of project managers. The young guy who has just taken up a project, he doesn't understand a lot of things, and lack of understanding can lead to underestimating the challenges and overlooking potential risk and even ignoring best case scenarios and other things. Sometimes to even lack of proper contingency planning can lead to a project failing. Then startup mentality of fledgling entrepreneurial companies. Sometimes, because you have just started, you may just take a lot of things for granted, and it can lead to failure in terms of what? In terms of project delivery. Sometimes, too, there can be competition from others, either locally or even globally, and it can lead to the project failing. Sometimes, too, intense pressure caused by unexpected government regulations. So, for instance, change in government incumbency can lead to the derailment of project delivery. And then the last but not the least, unexpected or unplanned crisis. You can imagine when the COVID came, a lot of things had to be put on hold. All this can lead to what? A project failing. But despite the anticipation that some of these things can lead to a project failing, the project will need to put in place some control mechanisms. And when we started, we indicated that the control mechanisms are basically the kind of, we refer to it as the health check or the kind of immune system for the project. So let's explain them. The first one is what we refer to as configuration control. The configuration control basically is a control mechanism that we can use to manage changes to the various project components. So you have to realize that when we are executing a project, the project delivery or the project execution will go through a number of versions. So we should be able to track the versions, what we have done today, what we are doing tomorrow. We are building onto it. We should be able to track the versions and provide updates as part of the configuration control. We also have to ensure that when we have a work package or work packages, we have to ensure that there is compatibility between the different work packages. Otherwise, someone will just do his part, and when he's done, we bring it to add to the overall project, and it will not fit. So ensuring compatibility between the various work packages is also very important. Apart from that, we have to ensure that there is system integrity, so that people are not easily able to bypass the system and do something dubious. Then there's also what we refer to as design control. Design control basically oversees the design changes and updates that may come with the project. We may foresee or we may not foresee some design changes. When design changes are done, we have to ensure that the design changes meets the design standards so that we can properly validate design modifications and maintain the design documentation. Because when we are making any changes to the design, we have to document it properly. So the design control will ensure that all the design changes are properly documented and they meet international standard. Now, when we are documenting configuration controls or design controls, Remember that somebody should be in charge of ensuring that all documents are properly kept. So there should be what? A document control. Someone who manages project documentations, tracking the different versions of project documents, and ensuring that whatever document we are going to file, it is properly what? Approved. Then the other thing is acquisition controls. Acquisition controls basically look at the issues about procurement. How are we going to oversee procurement processes? How are we going to manage vendor relationships? How are we going to control the purchasing decisions? All of this comes under what? The acquisition control. And then the last but not the least, how are we going to ensure that the product we are going to deliver, the service we are going to deliver, it meets the requirements? How are we going to ensure that it meets standards? How are we going to do that? We can do that by monitoring what? Quality of what is being done. So we have to, as I have indicated, we have to think of all these controls as the project's immune system. They work together to protect the project's integrity and ensure that everything will do what? Everything will run very, very smoothly. Now, if we have put in place all these controls, we also have to foresee that things can fail. And we're just looking at factors that can lead to project failure. But one last thing I want us to look at is the sustainability. Despite that it may fail, despite that we put in all these controls, we want to ensure that the project is done and done well so that we can build on it. But before we can even talk about project sustainability, the project must have been done. The project must have been done, completed, before we can talk about sustainability. When we are talking about project closeout, that is the final chapter in the project's what? In the project story. It's the final chapter. When we are closing out the project, it means the project has been duly executed. And we have to prepare closeout documentations. And this closeout documentation will resolve any problems or conflicts we had with the client or within the teams. We may also have to train project managers and facilitate the auditing of whatever would have gone on. And so the closeout documentation will include all historical records, all post-project analysis, what could likely happen. Maybe usually when you buy something, there's what we call after-sales services. So post-project analysis needs to be included as part of the closeout documentation. Now that we are closing out the project, there should also be financial closeout. We cannot be closing out the project when we are still making budgets to spend more and more on the project. So financial closeout is also very, very important when we are doing project closeout documentation. It is important when the project is closed out that we consider sustainability, because sustainability will involve how we can promote harmony among we as the organization and the clients who we are delivering the project to. The relationship will not just end there. So when we are talking about sustainability, we will be looking at quite a number of things, which we refer to as the triple bottom line of sustainability. And these are the issues that have to do with social, economic, and environmental issues. And all these three bottom lines contribute to the concept of what? Sustainability. What are the social implications of whatever we're doing? What are the environmental implications? And what are the economic implications? Okay? Any question? Any question? Yeah, someone gave an example of Agenda 111. Can you elaborate on it? Now that the government, the MPP government is coming to an end, the projects have not been completed. When we are talking about sustainability, we have to look at sustainability in terms of what? The triple bottom line of sustainability. Economic implications. NDC is already complaining that they don't have the money to complete some of these projects, even before they take on the reins of power. But there are social implications because there are many, many places that are lacking health facilities. Look at the La General Hospital, which was pulled down. If Agenda 1.1 is supposed to provide a hospital there, and now we are saying economic implications, what are the environmental implications? All of this, when we are considering sustainability, we have to consider them. But sustainability comes at the tail end of what? The project delivery. We should have delivered before we can start talking about what? Sustainability. Thank you very much. Any question?
Hello, Prof.
Yes.